Okay, so let's carry on from where we left off yesterday. Daniel narrowed his eyes. What's the catch? The catch, Daniel Holmes, is that you will work to earn your place here. What I am offering is not a holiday. It is an opportunity, a challenge. You must show me I was correct to bring you here, that you are, as I suspect, special. If you succeed in that, then the Emporium will become your home. And what happens if I don't come up to scratch? Said Daniel. You sack me? Leave me somewhere halfway round the world 100 years before I was even born? I will do no such thing, said Mr. Silver. If you do not belong in the Emporium, you will simply be returned to your own time, your old life. He offered a hand. So, do we have a bargain? Daniel organised the facts in his mind. He was an orphan leading a miserable life. He didn't have any friends. A gang of bullies had made it their mission to ensure his life was as uncomfortable as possible, and he was purely lost. And now he'd been invited to escape all of that and travel through time in a magical shop with a man he suspected was either a genius or a lunatic, or maybe both. He had the opportunity to be somebody else, even if it was just for a little while. And if he was someone else, maybe he wouldn't feel so alone. I'll do it, he said. Chapter 7, Opening Night. Next morning, as Daniel dressed, he stared out of his wagon at the blazing sun, low in the morning sky. He did not trust his own eyes. As far as Daniel could tell, his wagon and the meadow outside it were somehow contained inside a room within the shop. How did it all work? How did Mr. Silver bring outside inside? Was it like a movie set? An illusion? If he were a bird flying in the sky above the wagon, would he get only so high and reach a wall? The familiar sound of beating wings and Mr. Silver's gleaming magpies glided through the open door. They fluttered around his head, touched down on his shoulders, stamped their feet and pecked at him. They twitched their heads and flapped this way and that way. Get ready, no time to lose, they seemed to be telling him. Daniel finished getting dressed. The magpies chased him out of the door, across the hall of stairways and through the curtain. Mr. Silver was waiting behind his desk in the shop front. The only downside to travelling by flame, he said, expecting Daniel to know what he was even talking about, is the mess it tends to create. He ran his hand along a tabletop, coating his fingertips with a thick layer of soot. Your official Emporium duties, in the beginning at least, will consist of keeping the front of the shop presentable. I expect this place to be shining when we open to the public this evening. Daniel gazed around the soot-covered room. When do we open? Silver raised a finger and shook off the soot. Our doors open at twilight and close at dawn. And so, with excitement buzzing through him and a job to keep his mind busy, Daniel set to work, cleaning and tidying and clearing the place of soot. Everything was filthy. How long had it been since Mr. Silver last cleaned? Daniel adjusted columns of books and polished the silver and jetstone pieces of a beautiful chess set. Every time he turned away, the pieces would move around the board, as though a game between two invisible opponents was underway. So much work made the day rush past, and by early evening the day had melted to twilight. Daniel became aware that a curious crowd was beginning to gather outside. He peered out through the window. Why haven't they come before now? He said. We've been here for 2 days. Mr. Silver, who was at his desk writing in his battered old book, barely glanced up. Most of them haven't noticed us until now, he said. Daniel narrowed his eyes. You mean you haven't let them notice, don't you? To Mr. Silver only smiled. Then at last, Silver snapped his book shut, locked it away in its drawer, stood up and threw on his coat. Showtime, he said, patting his hair in a futile attempt to flatten the wild tangle. The door of the Emporium creaked open. Silence poured into the shop, deep and electric. Daniel held his breath, listening to the drum beat of his own heart. Mr. Silver held out his right hand, then waved his left hand over it. Where only a moment ago there had been nothing but empty space, a dove sat in his palm, white feathers glowing in the light of the fire. Daniel breathed 100 different smells: chocolate, wood fire, pipe smoke and cinnamon. Mr. Silver's grey eyes shone as he realised the dove was flying and watched it fly out into the darkness. "Welcome to opening night, Daniel Holmes." A flash of light illuminated the darkened sky. Then the customers began to come. Their eyes grew wide as they caught sight of the treasures within the Emporium. Grown men and women became like children once more, anxious to touch and inspect every shining trinket. When they noticed the curtain, Mr. Silver would pull back the material with a flourish, inviting them to witness the wonders beyond. Daniel watched with fascination as they filtered through. His mind fizzed with curiosity. "This is supposed to be a shop," he said, "so how come nobody's buying anything?" Mr. Silver wagged a finger. "That, Daniel, is where you are wrong. Come with me." The moment he stepped back through the curtain, Daniel knew something magical had happened. The entrance hall, full of staircases, once steeped in shadow and silence, had become alive with warmth and light. The soft flicker of the torches had intensified, reflecting and dancing on the sparkling walls. Aromas of caramel and spice filled the air. The hallways were dotted with performers and vendors, men and women scattered here and there at the foot and summit of stairways. Each was dressed in a combination of black and shimmering gold. Some handed out candy floss, or caramel apples, or warm chocolate pies. Others performed magic tricks, or juggled, or swallowed swords. No two were identical. "Where do they come from?" said Daniel, passing a bare-chested man who was breathing fire. The flames formed the shape of a pouncing tiger, then an elephant, and finally a dragon. "From within," said Mr. Silver. As they walked, they passed several customers chattering excitedly about rooms that contained impossible things. Oceans and deserts and windows right to the stars. A little girl tugged on the sleeve of her mother's coat. "I saw a dragon, Mama," she was saying. "A real dragon with fire breathing and wings and a spiky black tail." "I can understand what they're saying," said Daniel, who had until that moment forgotten that he was in a foreign country and that these people were not speaking English. "Of course you can," said Silver. "What use would I have for an assistant who would not communicate with my customers? You can now understand and speak any language that you may need." Daniel tried to remain cautious, suspicious even, mostly because nothing he cared about tended to hang around for very long. But wonder had begun to chip at his armour. "Are there other shops like this?" he asked. "Is there more magic out there?" "There is nowhere else like my Emporium," Mr. Silver said. "There is magic, certainly, and plenty of it, but it exists at the edges of things, in the corner of the eye and the back of my mind. Our world is filled with the extraordinary, Daniel. For many reasons, most people only see things they wish to see. They're afraid of anything that cannot be explained by a scientific formula or written in a textbook. So they ignore the unknown. But for those of us who open our eyes, those who truly dare to wonder, there is treasure everywhere." I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching this week. It has been a pleasure to do Reading for Pleasure, and I will see you again shortly.